I'd like to say this video isn't meant to offend, but we all know I'm not going to hide away from the over-the-top hyperbolic statements, because that's who I am. So, if you're the type of person who will be insulted by your favourite book being compared to the contents of a sewer pipe, go watch Hank Green. That guy's like Molly, but legal and better for your hydration levels, although he is sometimes cut with an inferior product. The book I DNF'd the quickest this year is Hangman by Maya Binyam. I don't care if you think you're the next Thomas Pynchon. There is no need to introduce weird nonsense before your character or your premise. And if you honestly think you're the next Thomas Pynchon, do us all a favour. Pick up your manuscript, fan those pages, smell that lovely paper smell. Walk into your kitchen, turn on your stove, and gently place the manuscript on said stove for a short period of time, so long as it's measured in weeks. When I read something that thinks it's smart and it's trying to be obscure and hard, one of two things is either going to happen. I'm either not going to get it, in which case I'm hardly going to enjoy it, or I am going to get it, and I'm not going to spend the countless pages self-congratulating myself for understanding James Joyce. I'm going to be bored. And all of this is probably a bit harsh to say about my opinions, as I honestly have no idea what their book was about, and it maybe just started in a dream sequence. But The Lovers by Yuma Kasbah is utter nonsense. A book that thinks it's saying so much and is actually saying nothing at all. But nothing at all in an out-of-order, confusing way that needs to be figured out. That this book was not just longlisted, but shortlisted for the Miles Franklin Award this year throws into question the competency of the judges. The worst book from an author I have previously loved this year is a tie. Greek Lessons by Han Kang was needlessly abstract with shell characters that were not built, where the themes dominated the characters and the themes were quite boring. I love Han Kang. The Vegetarian is one of the 20 books I would include in my top 10 books ever. That is a book that requires fantastic character work to succeed. Greek Lessons is not just the same author, but the same translator too. That blows my mind. I think I require a photograph of Han Kang and Deborah Smith holding a dated newspaper to prove that they're still alive and haven't been kidnapped. Although I suppose a newspaper doesn't prove you have or have not been kidnapped. 19 Claws and a Blackbird by Tender is the Flesh author Augustina Bastarrica is proof that a good novel writer can't always make the transition to a good short story writer. But this is a really extreme case. I would be unsurprised to learn that she wrote 19 Claws as a child. The writing was juvenile. I know literary horror is a bit of a hit or miss genre regardless of if you like it or not, but every short story followed the same recipe. So I've written one of my own claws to add to this collection. Mario and Leah were brother and sisters. Both have been given a large ice cream from a box by their father and told to go out and play. "What flavour did you get?" Leah asked her brother. "Watermelon." "What flavour did you get?" But just then Leah stabbed Mario in the eye, causing him to die instantly. "Citrus," she replied, "and watermelon." I have a love-hate relationship with the booker. I really do tend to love or hate the books that they put forward every year, and this year was no exception. I was spellbindingly impressed that Sarah Bernstein could write such beautiful prose within such poor writing. I don't have an issue with run-on sentences. Study for Obedience didn't have characters, plot, motivations, themes, or ideas. She just managed to fool many a prize judge with her lovely wordage. This is an example of a pretentious book that does not offer insight. Martin McGuinness has written only the second book that was so boring I physically wanted to hurt myself in order to stimulate my brain. In Ascension is what you should read when you've had too many Red Bulls. This is not a joke. I DNF'd this book when I started fantasizing about smacking my head against a brick wall instead of continuing. Even bad books shouldn't make you self-harm. I'm impressed that McGuinness could do this without including a single whale in the novel. Prophet Song wasn't so much a bad book as a bad formatting choice, rendering my neuroatypical brain completely incapable of reading it. And I know people think that this is petty, but if we've learnt nothing else from the Booker this year, please let it be that apple varieties reproduce asexually through grafting. Paul Harding demonstrated in This Other Eden that he isn't a fan of gardening. He also demonstrated that he isn't a fan of good writing, preferring really overridden, slow and repetitive prose. When you consider just how poor In Ascension was, it's really impressive that Harding can comfortably produce the worst book in the Booker dozen. In comparison to the Booker, I usually love The Woman's Prize, but I will say that this year was really weak. Nobody should be surprised to see Pod by Layleen Paul make this list. It is a children's book that includes dolphin rape in it. Who is this book aimed at? I mean, seriously, are people really so out of touch with the environmental movement that a novel like this, with themes as simple like this, is considered insightful? This book is really at a level aimed to educate primary school children. The Dog of the North by Elizabeth McKinnon is probably the hardest genre to pull off. Humour without humour. Even including jokes, humour is a difficult genre to pull off successfully. Mackenzie's humour is so off, I'm honestly not sure at what points the jokes are simply not working and at what point she's developing the plot. The few pieces I understood were intended to be funny, such as the brothers sharing a toupee, were just weird. Themeless, unrealistic, idiotic, humorless. At the time of reading, I disliked this even more than Pod, but I will give it something better than Pod. It was at least forgettable. I think this is the worst book I read all year. Naomi Elderman's The Future was like a bad lover, so quick that I didn't understand what's going on, but I'm pretty sure I have a headache now. The Rope Artist by Nakamura Fuminori is about a detective who investigates murders in Japan's BDSM scene, and this is exactly the book you're scared it might be. It would have been more tastefully done if Murakami had have written it. The 5 Sorrowful Mysteries of Andy Africa by Stefan Bruno was next level pretentious, full of boring word puzzles like believe without the B and the E and the V and the other E, and constantly referencing Homo habilis, none of which added any value to anything. Another manuscript that should have been placed on a stove. I'm going to finish with the highest note I can. The best worst book I read this year. This book is a frustrating combination of excellent and horrible. Lovely writing with interesting ideas combined with being boring and taking a real life story and removing the story from it, then taking real life characters and forgetting to render them. This is the work of an incredibly talented author who clearly only likes to write certain parts of her novel. That is, of course, Zadie Smith and her latest novel, The Fraud. Considering how thought-provoking and quotable this book was at times, it's really impressive that Smith managed to write such a poor overall novel. This video is the work of fiction. All authors and or novels discussed in this video are the invention of the producers. Any resemblance to commercially available books is purely coincidental. We still assert that John Green's brother is a better cure for dehydration than MDMA. I would like to thank my Patreons here for their support, but instead I think it's best I apologize to them for reminding them that Pod exists. Bye bye.